He was not Egypt's greatest pharaoh. He did not build the pyramids, conquer an empire, or rule for decades. Tutankhamun died young, after a short reign shaped by older men and a kingdom recovering from crisis. Yet one sealed doorway in the Valley of the Kings made him more famous than rulers who changed Egypt far more.
The real question is not why Tutankhamun ruled. The real question is why his tomb had the power to make a forgotten boy king immortal.
This channel looks at history not as a list of dates, but as a chain of decisions, mistakes, and consequences. Tutankhamun matters because his story stands between two forces: a royal system trying to repair itself, and a modern world hungry for mystery, treasure, and hidden rooms. His life was brief. His tomb was almost accidental. But together, they reveal how power can vanish in life and return through memory. Tutankhamun was born into the late 18th dynasty, one of Egypt's most powerful royal lines. His original name was Tutankhaten, a name connected to the Aten, the solar deity promoted by Akhenaten. That name matters because it placed the child inside one of the most disruptive experiments in Egyptian history. Before he became a symbol of eternal gold, he belonged to a court that had shaken temples, priests, art, politics, and royal identity. Even Tutankhamun's family tells the same story of uncertainty. Genetic studies have suggested that the mummy from KV-55 may have been his father, often identified with Akhenaten, while his mother is usually linked to the mummy called the Younger Lady. But the details remain debated. That uncertainty matters because the boy king was not just a person. He was a fragile point in a royal line already damaged by religious upheaval and succession anxiety. The crisis began before Tutankhamun had power. Akhenaten moved royal focus toward the Aten and built a new capital at Akhenaten, modern Amarna. Older temples, especially those linked to Amun, lost status. For priests, administrators, and local elites, this was not just theology. It changed money, land, ritual duty, and access to royal favor. A religious idea had become a political system, and that system did not survive its creator easily. When Akhenaten died, Egypt did not simply return to normal. The old religious order had been damaged, but the new one was fragile. Names, images, temples, and loyalties all carried political meaning. A young king could not solve that alone. The court around Tutankhamun needed legitimacy, and legitimacy in Egypt meant more than wearing a crown. It meant restoring balance, honoring the gods, and convincing the country that the center still held. This is the deeper reason Tutankhamun matters. His reign was not built around personal genius. It was built around repair. Around him stood officials, priests, military men, and palace figures who needed the boy king to represent continuity. The throne required a body, the kingdom required a symbol. Tutankhamun became that symbol at an age when most people today would still be children learning how the world works. Tutankhamun likely became pharaoh around the age of 8 or 9. That fact changes the story. A child could perform royal identity, appear in the ritual scenes, and carry the sacred names of kingship, but policy had to pass through older hands. I, who had deep court experience, and Horemheb, a powerful military figure, belonged to the world around him. The boy king sat at the center, but the machinery of rule moved around the throne. One of the clearest decisions was the change of names. Tutankhaten became Tutankhamun. His queen, Ankhesenpaten, became Ankhesenamun. These were not cosmetic edits. Names connected the royal family to gods, temples, and political direction. The message was visible. The Aten-centered experiment was being reversed, and Amun was returning to the heart of royal identity. A child's name became a public announcement of state policy. Tutankhamun's marriage also carried political weight. He was married to Ankhesenamun, a royal woman tied to the Amarna family. Their union helped keep legitimacy inside the royal bloodline, even as the court moved away from Akhenaten's experiment. 2 unborn daughters were found in the tomb, a quiet sign that the royal future had failed before it could become a stable succession. Another decision was movement. the court began to leave Akhenaten behind and reconnect with older centers of power. Thebes mattered because of Amun and the great temples. Memphis mattered because of administration and royal tradition. The restoration was not a single dramatic switch. It was a controlled retreat from a failed experiment, carried out through ceremonies, inscriptions, appointments, and the practical work of rebuilding trust. The restoration stela associated with Tutankhamun gives the official version of the crisis. It describes temples neglected, gods ignored, and the land needing order again. Like all royal inscriptions, it was not neutral journalism. It was political language. But that is exactly why it matters. It shows what the regime wanted people to believe, that Egypt had suffered disorder, and the young king was the face of restoration. Restoration also meant practical work. Temples needed land, offerings, personnel, workshops, and administrative support. Priests needed status restored. Officials needed a new official language after the Amarna experiment. The court could not simply announce that the old gods were back and move on. It had to rebuild a network of resources and rituals that tied villages, temples, and royal power together. Myth: Tutankhamun was important because he was a powerful ruler in life. Reality, his political importance came from what he represented. He was the living seal on a compromise after a religious crisis. He did not need to be a conqueror to matter. He needed to make Egypt feel continuous again. In a system built on divine kingship, even a child could become the official answer to a national wound. Official art tried to make the reign look stable. The king could be shown smiting enemies, honoring gods, and performing rituals like any adult pharaoh. That does not prove he personally led every action pictured. Egyptian royal art often presented ideal kingship, not literal biography. This is a key trap in reading Tutankhamun. The image of power can be stronger than the power of the boy behind the image. Then the story broke off. Tutankhamun died around the age of 18 or 19, after roughly a decade on the throne. For a kingdom trying to restore stability, that was a dangerous ending. He left no surviving heir. The royal line became uncertain, and the men who had stood near the throne became even more important. Death did not only end a young life. It reopened the question of who would control Egypt after the restoration. The cause of death has become one of the most famous questions in Egyptology. Older theories focused on murder, especially because damage to the skull once looked suspicious. Later medical examinations and scans complicated that story. Researchers have discussed a leg fracture, infection, malaria evidence, genetic vulnerabilities, and other health problems. The responsible answer is not a single dramatic crime scene. It is a body of evidence that still requires caution. Myth: King Tut was clearly murdered. Reality: the evidence does not allow that certainty. A murder story is easy to remember because it gives the young king a villain, but history is often less theatrical. Disease, injury, inherited weakness, and bad luck can be more powerful than a dagger. The mystery remains interesting precisely because the evidence points toward possibilities, not a simple verdict. For more than 3,000 years, the tomb waited. That is another part of the paradox. Tutankhamun was not forgotten, because his tomb was grander than every other royal burial. He was forgotten because later history covered him over. His name faded. His tomb entrance became buried beneath debris and later construction activity in the Valley of the Kings. What protected him was not invincible security. It was partly obscurity. The tomb's survival was not pure perfection. Evidence suggests it was disturbed in antiquity, probably more than once, and then resealed. What made it extraordinary was the amount that remained. Many royal tombs had been stripped almost completely. KV62 survived in a different category. Damaged enough to show human intrusion, but preserved enough to reveal an entire royal burial assemblage. In November 1922, Howard Carter's team found steps cut into the rock in the Valley of the Kings. Carter was working under the patronage of Lord Carnarvon, and the search had already tested patience and money. Then a sealed doorway appeared. The discovery did not instantly reveal the treasures. It created suspense, a door, a seal, a name, and the possibility that the valley had not yet surrendered its greatest secret. On November 26, 1922, Carter made a small opening and looked inside. Carnarvon asked if he could see anything. Carter's famous answer was later remembered as, "Yes, wonderful things." The phrase became part of the myth of archaeology itself, but the deeper significance was not romance. It was evidence, an 18th dynasty royal tomb with contents still crowded inside, waiting in a silence older than most kingdoms. Carter's work also mattered because the discovery could not be treated like a quick treasure grab. Objects were photographed, numbered, stabilized, packed, and removed over years. Harry Burton's photographs became crucial evidence, not just beautiful images. The tomb created a modern archaeological problem. How do you rescue thousands of fragile things without destroying the context that gives them meaning? In that sense, the excavation became part of the historical record itself. The tomb was small by royal standards, but it was packed with objects. Chariots, beds, boxes, statues, vessels, weapons, jewelry, shrines, and ritual equipment filled the chambers. They were not decorations in the modern sense. They were tools for eternity, status, protection, and transformation. The burial turned a brief reign into a complete world of objects, and that world gave modern viewers a rare glimpse of royal death as Egyptians imagined it. The burial chamber revealed nested layers of protection: shrines, coffins, and finally, the mummy of the king. The famous gold mask became the face by which the modern world recognized Tutankhamun. But it also created a distortion. People saw gold and imagined a mighty reign. In reality, the gold preserved the image of power more clearly than the life behind it. The walls of the burial chamber add another layer. They do not tell a grand military biography. They focus on funerary transformation, divine welcome, and the king's passage into the afterlife. That is why the tomb is so revealing. It does not preserve Tutankhamun as a commander or lawgiver. It preserves him at the moment Egyptian religion tried to turn a dead king into an eternal one. The treasure changed archaeology because it changed public imagination. Newspapers turned the tomb into a global event. Egypt, empire, tourism, museums, wealth, and mystery all collided in the story. The world did not only look at Tutankhamun. It looked at itself, looking at him. Ancient burial objects became modern headlines, and a dead king became part of mass media. That attention shaped how many people first imagined ancient Egypt. Then came the curse. After Lord Carnarvon died in 1923, stories spread that the tomb carried a deadly warning. The idea was irresistible: a sealed royal chamber, ancient magic, sudden death, and the fear that modern people had crossed a sacred line. But the stronger explanation is more ordinary. Carnarvon died after an infected mosquito bite, and many people involved with the excavation lived for years afterward. Myth, the curse killed those who opened the tomb. Reality, the curse story grew because it was useful to newspapers and powerful in the public imagination. It turned archaeology into a ghost story. It gave the discovery a moral warning: disturb the dead, and the past will strike back. The facts are weaker than the legend, but the legend helped keep Tutankhamun alive in popular culture. The treasures also raise a harder modern question: who owns the past? Carter's discovery happened in a world shaped by British influence in Egypt, European museums, colonial-era archaeology, and unequal power. The objects of Tutankhamun became symbols of Egyptian identity, as well as global fascination. The tomb shocked historians not only because it was rich, but because it forced modern people to confront how ancient heritage is excavated, displayed, and claimed. Tutankhamun's fame. then rests on a contradiction. In life, he was a young ruler used to stabilize a kingdom after religious upheaval. In death, he became the most visible face of ancient Egypt for millions of people. He is remembered less for what he commanded than for what survived around him. His story shows how memory does not always follow power. Sometimes it follows preservation. This is why comparisons are misleading. Ramses II left colossal temples and a reign that lasted for decades. Hatshepsut built a powerful royal image. Thutmose III expanded Egyptian power through campaigns. Tutankhamun did not belong to that category. His greatness is not the greatness of action. It is the greatness of preservation, discovery, and the way one intact burial could reshape the world's imagination of Egypt. That does not make Tutankhamun unimportant. It makes him important in a different way. He stands at the meeting point of crisis: restoration, death, archaeology, media, and modern myth. Through him, we see a kingdom trying to repair itself after disruption. We also see a modern world turning evidence into wonder, and wonder into a story it could not stop repeating. The final insight is simple but powerful. Tutankhamun did not become immortal because he was Egypt's strongest ruler. He became immortal because his tomb survived well enough for the modern world to meet him face to face. A fragile reign left a durable image. A child king became a global symbol, and the past reminded us that sometimes the smallest doorway can change the memory of an entire civilization. If you enjoy history told through causes, decisions, and consequences, stay with the channel. And in the comments, tell me this: was Tutankhamun's fame a historical accident? Or did his tomb reveal something so powerful that the world was always going to remember him? The answer changes how we think about power, memory, and survival. It also changes what we expect a forgotten ruler to teach us.